Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Talk, talk, talk. Ça marche? Ça marche? Bon. Okay, everybody. Hello. Hello. All right. They're used to seeing me here. Okay, everybody, can I ask everyone to sit down, please, but only in a special way? Okay, our challenge this afternoon is different from usual. So, thank you. There's three things that are coming your way right now. The first thing is I'm going to ask you all to orient your chairs in a certain way to promote what is coming. So that means there's three chairs facing this way right now with three folks in them. And the idea is for the Space Hub that we will all somehow be close to this table and so that we can all hear each other and see each other. Ideally, we'd be in the round, but that's too hard to organize here. But let's try to bring everybody as close as possible to Eric, and Minas. So those three. Oh, and is John here? Was he got mic'd up? There he is. John Moores. He's going to come and sit at the table. Yeah. Well, I thought John was going to be joining him, but anyway. Okay. Good. So, for those of you who are at the back of the room, if you choose to remain unnecessarily distant from the conversation, you won't be in on it. So come on, snuggle up if you will. The second thing, there's a table right here, right. You're a little bit behind, but that's okay. The second thing is that Phil and I have separate announcements about CASSI's two peer-reviewed publications, the Canadian Aeronautics and Space Journal, which Phil will have a brief word to say about, and the Canadian Journal of Remote Sensing that I'll have a brief word to say about. And after that, the Space Hub will get underway. So we're going to be really quick, Phil. Yep. Go ahead. Okay. You want to use that?
I don't know. Which one is on? Okay, so thanks very much. I just wanted to let everybody know, some of you might know this already. Some of you have probably already sensed this. So the CASJ, the Canadian Aerospace Canadian Aeronautics and Space Journal has been on a little bit of a hiatus. I've recently been named the new editor-in-chief of that journal, and so I'm looking forward to kicking this journal off again. It's going to only be an online journal, like most journals are going right now. You'll also notice that you may have, in previous years of CASSI Astro, we have done proceedings of the conference. We're now going to shift those quote-unquote proceedings to the journal itself so that we can have peer-reviewed scientific publications again. So I'm here to announce that we are going to kick off that journal again with a special edition of papers that are coming directly from CASSI Astro 2022. So stay tuned. Anybody that presented excuse me, an abstract or a presentation this week will be getting an email inviting you to write a full-length paper if you'd like. They'll be due sometime in the February timeframe. It will go through a formal peer review and eventually get published for the Canadian Journal of Canadian Aeronautics and Space Journal. So stay tuned for that. And I'd encourage those of you that are interested in doing this to do so. And again, I'll just stress this will be peer reviewed. It will be peer reviewed by our mostly Canadian, but international review committee as well. So if you're interested in getting a publication out of this, then please give that some consideration. I'm going to be getting my students to do the same thing. Okay, so I'll leave it at that, and I'll turn it over to Jeff for the other journal.
Thank you, Phil.
Okay.
So the Canadian Journal of Remote Sensing is our other peer-reviewed journal. It is Science Citation Index listed, as those of you who read it will know. It's a journal of some repute, and it is about to release Volume 48, Issue 5, which has a special topic called Advances in Hyperspectral Remote Sensing for Earth Monitoring and Mapping. So this may be a topic of interest to a number of you in the room today. If you want to be a recipient or have access to this journal, all you need to do is join CASSI. So I recommend that, regardless of whether or not you're interested in the journal. But this will get you a complimentary subscription to the journal of your choice. So I highly recommend it, and on behalf of Editor-in-Chief Monique Bernier, I bring you this message. Thank you. And now, over to Eric Laliberté and Eric Vachon, and Meena Mitri and John Moores for the fireside chat.
We'll need the clicker, I guess. Okay, so good afternoon. I don't know why I ended up with this other microphone, but let me just put things in context. And the reason we're sitting down here is to encourage the discussion. This is not people sitting up front and being asked questions. This is a discussion. This is you sharing your ideas and your perspective on the topic that we have. And what's this topic? Basically, okay, so there's microphones for you to talk to if you can't talk loud enough.
I can pass it around.
Please, thank you, because I'll be walking around as well, but it's going to be hard to use this microphone. So we're the space community. The space context, the space utilization, exploration has been and will continue to be an adventure in which collaboration is the key to success. As the context evolves to include more participants, more players, more ever-increasing need for data, information services, and that we need to seek a delicate balance between the operational need of just good enough and the in-depth observations, data that we need in order to support the science, the innovation. We have to evolve the collaboration. We have to change, basically adapt our collaboration models. This session is about collaboration. We want to exchange, we want to have your ideas, and in prompting that, basically what we have is the Canadian Space Agency thought about a different model of doing business, of working together. We called it the Space Hub, and you'll hear Eric Vachon talk a little bit about the Space Hub, what it is. It's a concept, right? Okay, but we need to exchange on that. So that's just an idea to spark the discussion. Then I will ask John Moores from York University and our new senior science advisor to the president of the CSA to give the perspective from the research, the academic side. And Meena Mitri then will... Oh, I did not know we had sound effects. Thank you. And then Meena Mitri, who accepted to represent the technology, the business side, and give us his perspective of collaboration as a whole. They'll have about 5 minutes each, and then we go into your ideas, discussions. So not questions or pointing the fingers. You can ask for clarification. Sorry, you're going to... And basically, I'm gonna try and orchestrate this discussion with all of you, and we want to come out of this with ideas, better path going forward to set up the collaboration for the next decade or so. Okay? So I hope that's clear as the intent, and then I will ask right away. I will ask Eric to give us a little bit of the concept, what it is, when we're talking about Space Hub, the idea that we had in terms, and set it in the context of collaboration. Go ahead, Eric.
All right, thanks very much. Merci, Eric. Hi again. I realize that most of you were here this morning. I'll go briefly through my presentation. You will recognize some of the slides that you've seen earlier this morning. Well, as you know, the space context is evolving. The space economy is growing rapidly, undergoing rapid transformation. New players being involved, non-traditional players, emerging players as well, new business models being implemented, new space, commercialization, and new products and services being offered also on the market. So space agencies like us, the CSA, we need to adapt to that. We need to be more agile, to be more responsive in that context. And that's really what Space Hub is all about. I guess a few more words. The idea is really about changing the way we do business. Thinking about the CSA as it relates to some of our activities. So our way of implementing big, large projects will remain, but we believe that for some of our activities, we could do it a bit differently. Again, being more responsive, working more closely with industry and the academia and the overall sector. We want to see as to how we could open up a bit more, offering our expertise and facilities to the space sector. We want to leverage our unique expertise and facilities. These are some of the things that we want to do. Quickly, I'll jump to these 3 pillars, and again, it's just a concept. Connect and access. It's really about connecting all space stakeholders within Canada, so that we can work a bit more together. Also, again, as I said, opening up our facilities and expertise. Accelerate. It's you may have heard fly early, fly often, or space solutions. So that's this pillar here that I'm talking about. That's really about providing more frequent access to space to SME startups. We want to work a bit more with innovators in Canada, and also about developing space solutions, really establishing some sort of a pre-operational space capabilities. And the last one is inspire and train. As I mentioned earlier today, one of our priorities at the CSA is to invest in STEM. Space is inspiring, so we should take advantage of it for developing the workforce of tomorrow. So again, we have a few ideas related to that. Getting into some of the details, connect and access. Well, what we have in mind, again, providing our expertise and facilities. On the science side, technical side, as well as maybe on the project management and business side as well. These are areas where we could contribute. We have facilities at the CSA, at CSA headquarters. As I mentioned this morning, we have lunar terrains, R&D labs, rover platforms, and all sorts of capabilities that could be leveraged as well. We've been thinking also about establishing some sort of a concierge type of support, just helping the sector navigate through all the various programs that we have within government. And and just establishing some sort of a network, facilitating networking between all space stakeholders within Canada. That might be a role that the CSA could play. Accelerate, again, that's the big piece, space solutions. It's really about providing more frequent access to space. And we have something in mind. We have a special initiative in mind where we would like to come up with a project where from start to finish, we would like to conduct 3-year projects. So within 36 months, we would like to put things in space. That would be subject to having the right TRL level to start. So basically, phase A to D, we believe that we could conduct missions 36 months total, plus 1 or 2 years of operations. We would start small with a few $millions, and we could go up to tens of millions of dollars, depending on the scale and on the scope of the different missions. But, and again, the driver there would be, we want to do things rapidly, at low cost. We want to take more risk. We want to come up with new procurement strategies. We've been working with PSPC on that, and coming up with some sort of a new framework for implementing these missions so that we can do it more rapidly and being more responsive to the needs of government. So in a nutshell, that's pretty much what this is. We could elaborate on that. We've been working on the new call that would be done through procurement, through contracts. And we're targeting next spring for launching the call, planning an RFI before Christmas, hopefully. Well, we'll share with you all our strategy, the framework that we want to use to implement the program, as well as the various challenges that we've been thinking about, because it's all about launching challenges. We want to respond, we want to come up with solutions to needs of the Kenyan government. That's the whole idea. And again, through that, we would like to offer, again, our expertise and facilities as governance furnished services through these contracts. And lastly, inspire and train, a few ideas that we've been thinking about. You've heard about our Cubics initiative, so it's in line with our strategy for developing the workforce of tomorrow. Been thinking also about the CSA Academy, so we're really revisiting all our programs that target universities and students as well. Yeah, I'll stop there. I guess really it's a change for us. That would be a culture change, and we really wanted to set the stage. As you know, Space Hub is one thing, but it's also about collaboration, as Eric has mentioned. So it's really to set the stage as it relates to the government perspective. So I guess I'll stop there, and I'll pass it over to John. Do you have a presentation, John?
Oh, no, there's no slides up there.
All right.
So thanks very much, Eric. I appreciate that. And I wanted to take just a couple of minutes here to talk a little bit about science at the CSA and maybe do a brief little introduction, and then sort of, what my thoughts are thinking about what I would tell industry and academia in the room. So for those of you who haven't met me, my name is John Moores. I'm got a bit of a split personality. I'm half a professor at York University, and I'm the new science advisor at the Space Agency, and I'm really lucky, I think, to be able to stand upon the wonderful foundation that my predecessor, Sarah Gallagher, built, who was the first person in that role and really defined what it would do with the Space Agency. And I think that science is really important for the CSA. It's really has to do with how much of what we actually do at the agency is science-driven. And that means different things in different areas. So if you're thinking about the space exploration side of the house, often we're talking about developing new tools, new techniques, acquiring scientific knowledge about the universe and our place in it in order to inspire Canadians. And on the space utilization side of things, it's often about a better scientific understanding of our own home planet, our relationship to space, to deliver benefits for Canadians. Meanwhile, on the space science and technology side, the challenge really lies in how to create that scientific capacity that we need within the space ecosystem that's going to permit Canada to have that deep and meaningful, impactful contributions to what's being done in space exploration and utilization. So really, they're the incubator, and that, I think, makes Space Hub really interesting. Now, at the same time, in contrast to some other government departments you may be familiar with, a lot of CSA science is not actually carried out in-house. Instead, we rely on our partners out in the space ecosystem, and the one that I often think of is academia. And what they do is they provide research expertise, they train the next generation of space researchers, they advise government through the consultation committees that we have, and they assist in defining scientific policy through processes like the topical teams, for instance. So I wanted to do just like a super quick introduction here, because this is actually the first conference I've been to with an exclusively Canadian space community audience. So I thought I should say hello and who it is that I am, because I'm not Sarah, I'm a little bit different. So one nice thing about this role is this is the one person who is expected to be an active researcher at the CSA. And I can understand there's always a certain nervousness when somebody new takes on this role. The CSA covers so many different areas, and sometimes it's just natural to wonder whether this person belongs to one area or another. But you can rest assured, because I've had some exposure to a wide variety of different areas in Canada's space sector during my research career. So primarily, I'm a planetary exploration person. I've served on 6 international space missions. I've been involved with space astronomy through leading an Astronomy Create, where we've trained over 100 HQP. I've worked with Environment and Climate Change Canada. Actually, I used to be an NSERC VF there. So Earth observation and atmospheric science, we do a lot of that in my department as well. I've done a little bit of space health. I'm technically a prof of space engineering, so I know a little bit about that area as well. And I've published in astrobiology and planetary protection as well. So one thing I really love about this job is it gives me access to all those different areas and to see the synergies between them. And through this role, I'm also plugged into Canada's science mission more generally through the Department Science Advisors Network that's run by the Office of the Chief Science Advisor of Canada, and also through the Royal Society of Canada. So for our colleagues and partners in the room, as you're thinking about how to engage with Space Hub, I think of my role, is not just advising the government, but also to engage externally to really enhance the ability of the CSA to serve the interests and goals of Canada's mission in space. And that's about serving that ecosystem. So if I was going to say something to industry, I'd mention that science is playing a progressively larger role in space as time progresses. And in many areas, science really provides that relevance argument. It's the inspiration. It's what drives a lot of these missions. And as a result, it's important that that be aligned with the government priorities. So in short, projects that can't trace their way back to the science often are not even going to be fundable. So in order to help there, you want to make sure your projects, they have robust science input right from the start. And that means engaging with all of these partners that we're talking about. And also engaging deeply in the consultation processes that contribute to setting these government priorities in the first place. Now, for the academics in the room, and there are a few here, which is always great to see, deepening those connections with industry help so that you can really be involved early stage on research with tools and techniques that are going to address your science. Set up missions where you can go and actually do that stuff. Organize. Many voices. When you're speaking together as one like that, that can be impactful within the government. And we've seen that time and again with the missions that get funded. And reflect on the internal structures within your own universities that can enable, or in some cases, hobble space or interdisciplinary research, which is important for the CSA. So look for good ways to break down barriers, to build robust structures there, and to encourage and support early career researchers to pick space-based topics. And the last thing I'd say there is find ways to bring a more diverse and inclusive pool of researchers into the space sector. We're all going to benefit when we hear from their voices and their perspective. So, of course, none of this happens in a vacuum, so I welcome your input as well as how the CSA could support the capacity and community building work. And of course, we're here at a fireside chat today, and I think about science is really kindling that fire for all we want to do. So I thought that I would bring the fireplace with me. So we've got that here. And I'll turn it over to the next speaker.
Now, I certainly don't want to follow that act, because I was going to initially lead in with saying we don't have a fire here, and now you filled that responsibility. It's a privilege to be here amongst Canadian colleagues and just to have the opportunity to exchange ideas on what it is we can do to become sort of a thought leader in space, and how we can bring Canada to the forefront of everything that we're doing in the space community broadly. And so my perspective is kind of a little bit diverse, but before I get into that, I'll just share a little bit about my background for those that may not know me. I'm Mina Mitri. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Kepler, a business that I started with a few colleagues out of university back in 2015. And we had a view of how do we bring a mission statement that we built into reality. And so our mission statement was, how do we provide internet access the same way we so enjoy it here on Earth, but outside this world? Recognizing that there was a resurgence of space activity. It's really crazy for me to say out loud right now that we saw 3 private spaceflight companies take people outside to orbit. That's nothing I could have imagined at the time we were starting. But we had this view that space was going to proliferate. There will be tremendous new users of space. And internet, the way we've enjoyed it here today, has enabled applications we never could have imagined when it started. But now, fast forward, we can never live without it. And the same kind of infrastructure needs to be built outside this world. And so fast forward a little bit, we went on this journey of now, what's the strategy to get us there? And collected some colleagues, raised some capital, and today we count 19 satellites in our network on orbit today, and we've got a team of about 125 people and continue to expand. We've brought in just over 100 million US in capital and have trained and built several highly qualified personnel here in Canada. And so for us, when we really think about how do we build ourselves as a leader, how do we instantiate this next generation of growth, there's a few things that we think about. First, it's really problem statement driven, so kind of aligned to the science mission theme, but building around that with, what's the underpinning problem that we're looking to solve, and why does it matter, and who cares, and asking yourselves that same question several times before you get to the heart of it, and several sleepless nights eventually leads you to an answer that says, here's the problem we actually want to solve. And then from there, working our way towards, how do we solve this problem? We choose problems that are relevant, is aligned with our broader mission statement. How do we bring internet outside this world? And then we get a team together to go out and tackle those problems. And that is a mindset I've inherited from entrepreneurship. I don't actually come up from the space sector historically. So before working on Kepler, I actually worked on a food and beverage automation business where we would design these machines that would dispense custom blends of loose leaf tea. So I'm sure that is a wild departure for most of my space colleagues here, but it brings us into this mindset of how do we bring relevant problems that we should solve and deploy the resources behind it. And then the other thing that I always encourage the sort of the broader ecosystem to keep in mind is as an early stage startup, you typically only have 12 to 18 months to live. And so the solution space that you're afforded at that very early stage is very bounded. Your principal driving constraint is how are you going to make it to survive that 12 to 18 month hurdle. And once you advance a little bit later on, then you open up the aperture a little bit and you start to have default to live positions where you won't die in a shorter period of time. And then you can start to think about, okay, well, what's the next generation of things I need to do to allow me to continue my growth? And where we've seen those similar hurdles is people that carry that knowledge or insight in the very later stage of building large-scale space enterprise. So in Canada, we've built a lot of really great early technologies. We have a great and incredible university pool of students that provide amazing talent, and that's an amazing resource that's forced us to stay in Canada for very early on. But as we've developed to be much later stages, we lack that sort of independent talent that's been there, done that, has taken an idea from 100 people to the New Shepard rocket launching into orbit. And that's some of the stuff that we really worry about these days, is how do we get that next generation of talent that'll enable us not to just be an SME, but become an iconic space company and continue to grow in that way. And so if I were to just kind of close my remarks, we've benefited a tremendous amount from the support of the CSA in the very early stages that helped us to get some of our ideas up into orbit. And so the new concept of the Space Hub, I'm excited to kind of see it develop and see what are the opportunities for us to collaborate with the broader space ecosystem here.
Thank you so much. Thank you, all, the three of you, for setting a little bit of the stage. I think I heard, I basically heard focus. I heard people, whether the way we choose them to make the link, to make sure that we understand each other in collaboration, and also setting up different tools that we have in order to collaborate. So I'd like to have any reaction or any addition that you'd like to have when we're talking about collaboration. Yes?
In my view, a good analogy for collaboration is carpooling. If you don't go to the same place at the same time, forget it. So you may take some innovative action, say I'm buying a car for my wife to take the kid to the kindergarten, so I don't have to take them to the kindergarten before going to work, so that help. Maybe be more flexible and agile by adding a third neighbor in the carpooling, so we have more opportunity to do the carpooling. But at the end, if nobody is going to the same place at the same time, forget it.
Okay. So there's somebody else down there.
Sure, you stand up at the microphone right
Yeah.
there, too. Al?
You can use both.
Stand up with the microphone there.
You can use those microphones.
Yeah, Al Conrad. Back in the 90s, I participated in a program. It was under the Society of Automotive Engineers, and it was called A World in Motion. And the idea was to get people interested in STEM from K to 8, okay? I was Googling while I was looking at your slides, so you may want to have a look at that in terms of a model and perhaps even leveraging that.
Can you
What it
zoom
involved was people like myself and
portion, at least.
real professionals visiting. I visited 2 grade 6 classes, and the idea was they had little projects they did, and then it was fun because you were interacting with kids. The teachers were playing along. And in fact, at one of the classes, and it was once a week, like for a whole winter or whatever, I was a colonel, right? So they had a little box, and it was questions. It was ask the colonel. So there was almost like a fist fight to see who got to pick the piece of paper. And I remember one of them, it was obviously a plant by the teacher, you know, explain complex numbers. I mean, and more playful ones, like what happens if you throw up in space, you know, kind of thing. Where does it go? You know, I mean, it was really fascinating. So I only participated in that in a few years because then I moved on, right? But that kind of program, and again, there is a website for it. You know, you have a look at it and see if you could spin that from a space point of view or whatever. It was highly effective. I mean, the kids loved it, and it was fun too.
Okay.
What was the name of the program again?
It's called A World in Motion.
Okay.
I thought it was Wheels in Motion, but that's something else, right? So, A World in Motion, Society of Automotive Engineers International. But we were running that in Ottawa in the early 90s. And I don't know what happened to it. I don't know if it's still going on, but it's a really good model. And they actually provided little kits and stuff, you know, and the whole, and in fact, one of the things they wanted the professional to actually take the class to their workplace. Well, my workplace was a bunch of offices. So what I did, I phoned a friend in the National Aeronautical Establishment, and I gave him a tour of the wind tunnels and everything like that, see? So there's really good opportunities if you get, you know, participation from people in this room, you know. It was highly effective anyway.
Thanks very much for sharing. So I guess we're thinking about a few different ideas at the CSA Academy. We had the experience with the CubeSats when we brought CubeSat teams to the CSA a few years ago. We had some webinars. We had these students working together. We did some training on site. Ruthann, would you like to add anything to this?
Actually,
The key was sustainment. I mean, you know, it was a program for a whole winter.
Oh, I
It
see.
wasn't like just a one-shot thing,
I
you
see.
know, visit from Hatfield or something like this. You know, it was a sustained initiative to actually get to know the kids, and the clincher was you actually took them somewhere, and their eyeballs were bigger than their face when they saw stuff. See, and that really was effective, and it was K to. Actually, it was like I was dealing with grade 6 and stuff, so that was kind of the optimum, you know, 6 to 8 kind of thing. Sorry.
no, that's fine. We all know the power of space to inspire young children. I mean, this is a great program. I'm going to look it up after. I'm Ruthann Chiquan. I work with Eric on the academic development side. And I would like to issue a challenge to everyone here to go check out our website and register as a space ambassador so that we do have a speaking program. We'll give you a kit. We'll help put you in touch with people who are looking for experts to come to schools and talk. So please check that out on our website. But we are looking at developing more activities and specifically for Space Academy, hands-on space-specific activities to really address a little bit of what you were saying about ensuring that students have some operational experience by the time they get to the space workforce. So it's all about tracing a path from the very early interest and getting them excited about science and technology very early, sustaining that interest, transitioning it over specifically to space because we know the power that space has to motivate, but we also know what kind of skill sets we need in that growing space economy that everybody keeps talking about. We need that talent, we need that creativity, and we need to ensure that they graduate with skills and having had some experience like the Cubics programs where they've actually touched something, they've actually worked on part of a mission.
I believe that there was a follow-on there.
It is a conversation, right? You know, it is a completely different program when you're talking to people in grade 6 and whatever, right? It was playful. They had little competitions making paper airplanes, cars. I mean, so what you want to do is have materials that are prepared for the people that are going to do the actual business, that are playful and are things they can do and teach them about the ubiquity of space and things like this, get them excited, right? It's a whole different program later to actually cultivate STEM stuff, right? At that stage, you know, and you've got a mix of girls, boys, whatever backgrounds. The mission is to get it playful and get them excited. Get the seed planted. And that's what SAE learned. It was grades 5 to 7, that time frame, that's where people, and some of it's the teachers, decided, oh God, math and engineering is too hard. See, so it's the whole idea, make it playful, space-oriented, make them show that it's not out there, it's here, you know. But then later, I mean, there's things you need to do to actually help them cultivate those skills so they could actually like go to university or launch a career. I mean, so you need to segregate things, I think, by age group, and, you know, it's kind of targeted. You know.
I would just correct in this way of saying, I would replace you with we, right? It's us. It's the space community. We all gain, and we all will gain from that. And that was also something raised during the National EO Forum a few weeks back.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to bring up a little bit of experience from the Canadian CubeSat program. I think this platform that you've developed is fantastic because I think it focuses on things that CSA is uniquely positioned to be able to provide to kickstart research groups, to kickstart companies. You know, you mentioned the CubeSat lab, you mentioned access to the Mars little playground that you have there. One thing I would like to add, and forgive me if this is a little bit technical, but access to spectrum is huge. This was something that the CubeSat program admittedly kind of stumbled on a little bit recently. Many of us struggled to get frequency allocation through various means, whether it's through Amateur Radio Union or something else. I think that the CSA is uniquely positioned in their role as part of ISED to be able to help university labs and other small startups have access. I mean, I think in a dream world for me, the CSA would have a small block of spectra that they could allocate to small groups without them having to go through the lengthy applications. So it's something that I think the CSA is aware of. I know that the people that are running the CCP and Cubics are aware, but I want to keep banging that drum because it was something that many of us stumbled on, and I'm seeing some head nodding from Mina as well. I mean, you know, if I could point at the one thing that gave me the most sleepless nights about CCP, it was whether or not we're going to get spectrum allocation.
Is this in the UHF bands?
Yeah, exactly. UHF. Yeah, sure.
I think maybe I'll add a few comments there. One, I would just, this is getting really technical, but I would just encourage not to use the UHF bands in general because of ISET's priority, and those frequencies overlap with emergency radio services, and generally they want to see UHF stations that are outside of Canada, and that's why the process is pretty lengthy. To come to bat for ISET a little bit here, there's a 90-day processing period now that's been put into place, so that's net new. Not that I'm necessarily advocating I'm a unbiased party here, but there's a 90-day window now in which they have to receive, review, accept or reject an application. That sort of streamlines some of the processing. The yet better response that I would even offer up is a collaboration with the CubeSat program and Kepler could see streamlined access to the spectrum. So today we have licenses that actually do cover ourselves and our customers. So anybody that's on our network doesn't need to seek their own independent licensure, and that covers S-band, KU band, and a few other frequency bands. And so we've worked hand in hand with ISET to try and break down this barrier because it's incredibly important. And so certainly that's an area of collaboration we'd be happy to explore around, can we provide our spectrum rights in a streamlined way so that the CubeSat program never had to worry about how do you get a transceiver to work, and that's not the priority.
You'll be hearing from me.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I think it's a very important question that Phil and Mina touched upon. Eric Vachon mentions that a part of space solution, accelerator pillar, whatever you call it, we have developed a list of government finished services and defined those. Among those services that we absolutely agree is help in resolving regulatory issues. It's spectrum, it's also remote sensing space systems act, famous or infamous RSSA. So yes, it's part of our thinking, and we will work with community to provide those services.
I would just strongly encourage, I'd be happy to have a conversation about that, just because I sat on the review panel for Global Affairs Canada on redoing the RSSA in the Act, and there's some things that are coming down the pipe. But we've also worked with them to sort of streamline the whole of the regulatory burden. So from the Time and Earth Observation Mission wants to think about getting comms off of their spacecraft through to the delivery of data. We've got some streamlined processes with those organizations now.
Okay, so yeah, just before I go to you, basically Accelerate, it's not just innovation, it's about the process, it's about making easier the collaboration to happen. So some of the processes that we need to look at collectively and see how we can benefit from your experience and certainly from others as well. Mick, you wanted to?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to change the topic if that's okay. Yeah,
Please.
so I'm Mick Faragelli. I'm the CTO of Mission Control, and we're a small and medium enterprise. We're getting to the threshold of medium, I think, pretty soon anyway. So I wanted to, start off first by congratulating the CSA on really changing the way it does some of these funding programs. There's been a real shift, I think, starting with Sylvain Laporte and now under Lisa Campbell's leadership as well. And in particular, I think that some of the programs under like LEAP, particularly capability demonstration, has allowed us, I can speak to specifically, but I assume other companies, to get through that TRL valley of death, really go beyond TRL 6 and do some flight demonstration of technology, which ultimately leads to expert sales. And we've certainly demonstrated that. We've translated that investment into expert sales, and I think that's something that a lot of small businesses kind of need when they're starting up. They need that demonstration. So what I thought was really great that CSA did is they've created a new program called Technology Demonstration, which I think has the same intention but with a broader mandate. So I want to say that's great, and then offer some other perspectives on that as well. So on the first, and I think a bit of flexibility in those programs is really important, whether that's the kind of low to mid TRL stuff or the up to TRL 9. You know, sometimes commercial opportunities don't always align with the kind of RFP schedule and all that, of course. So the open call concept is a really nice one, I think. That's quite beneficial. It affords some flexibility there. I can tell you from experience, trying to line up a flight opportunity to the moon at the same time as a CSA RFP is a very challenging thing to do, and might guide some of your technology demonstration opportunities, and therefore a lot of times your customers. So it's a bit of a weird, you wouldn't think that, but that actually happens. So that's one just comment. And the other side is on sort of this space, and I think it's thematic here with Space Hub, is on service procurement. So again, the CSA does a great job at the R&D funding. I think, you know, we're all a testament to that, whether it's academia or industry or whatever, do a lot of great R&D. We've translated that again to sales to other space agencies, but we haven't been successful with the CSA. Now, I'm not trying to lobby that here, but I suppose it highlights that if we're able to do something, say, selling to a smaller space agency around the world or even to NASA, maybe there's a lack of clarity in those kind of mechanisms within the government of Canada, how to procure services for companies. So it'd be something that I think the Space Hub could maybe facilitate, at least in concept. So those are my comments.
Thanks very much for the feedback. On your last point, are you referring to the CSA becoming the anchor customer for some of the services offered? No,
not necessarily.
No?
I mean,
okay.
I think I can use us as an example. You know, we've had success in selling, you know, rover driving software to companies and space agencies around the world, including NASA. we haven't had, like even having that conversation with CSA is sort of, you don't know where to start, right? Even though we know CSA the best out of the agents. That's just an example. I'm certainly not trying to push that as agenda, but I think it's a good example of there's some organizations that might be developing technologies that CSA could be a customer of. They don't need to be. It doesn't validate the market, but it could just be sort of, hey, you know, who do we show this to in case they could be interested? Because it's not always the same people who review the RFPs or those types of things. So from my experience, that could be something that the Space Hub can facilitate beyond investing in the R&D development, but also in looking at it as, hey, that's a useful technology that we might need. So, yeah.
Excellent. Thanks very much for the feedback.
I have a tendency to look this way, but okay. So
Okay.
you're next.
Yeah, I agree with what said about the CSA program. There is a lot of good thing in what is being proposed by CSA. I would be interested to know if CSA want to survey people, how many people find what they are looking for in those programs, and what else people are looking for. I'm taking an example, for instance, of GHG-SAT. GHG-SAT was not built from CSA program. It was not built from CubeSat. They developed their own spacecraft model, and this is very successful. And then another example I can give you is Capella Space. I've been in contact with them for the past 2 years since they started. And they started with the ideas of building a SAR on 16 new CubeSat. They developed a membrane antenna, and they use origami to fold it in the spacecraft, and guess what? It never deployed. So, so at the end, they had to develop their own spacecraft, use a membrane reflector antenna to get something working. So I'm coming back to the ideas of you need to know where you start and where you want to go, and then you can see how you can help people to go from A to B. That, in my view, that what need to be done. CubeSat is very good. I think it's been very helpful in the university to train students, but you have to ask yourself, where do we want to go with CubeSat? Our objective is not to get people developing CubeSat or bigger CubeSat or more CubeSat. We want people to be able to develop some program to have some new space venture in Canada that can reproduce what is being done elsewhere in the world.
Now I understand better what you were referring to in terms of the carpooling exercise. It's not just all of us trying to go to the same destination, but knowing what the destination is, sharing it, and understanding it. And I think that speaks to, I think some of what you were saying speaks to the expertise aspect that Eric was presenting as one of the things that we want to offer from the CSA perspective, we want to offer in terms of collaboration. So we need to understand, and by the way, just before I go to you, sir, on the screen, I know it might be hard to read, but there were a few questions that people internal to CSA were really interested in fielding. So one of which is really interesting is, what does success look like for you? Like, what's a successful collaboration for you? And what do we need to stress in terms of success? So I'm just throwing this out there for others that are thinking about their own intervention into this discussion. Sir?
Great, thanks. So I wanted to jump on one comment that Mick made, and the success of some of the aspects of the LEAP model, which I think can be also expanded to some of the other aspects of the Space Hub that were mentioned. Specifically, I'm thinking of the access to CSA facilities, for example. So a couple times the rover analog terrain came up, which us at Concordia we've used for several years very successfully. Weren't able to this year, but I'm very interested in getting re-engaged in that. And so something that is rolling ability to submit a request to do that, you know, so that it's open and fair and all of that, but agile, as you mentioned as well. That's I think very important. That's a really important aspect of that, to make sure that it's not just once every year or two that there's some opportunity that you can respond to, in case opportunities come up asynchronously with that.
So do I understand this right in terms of not being a call for we're offering up this time around this, but rather knowing that it's a tool that's available? You know, any tool can be overwhelmed by demand and basically you have to wait, but knowing that it's a tool out there that's available and that you apply to it. That's the change?
That's what I'm suggesting, that could be very useful and sort of responsive to the community, in the sense that, yeah, and if it is getting overwhelmed, then of course you need some sort of way to keep it fair. It's like, no, you can't just submit 18 requests, and because you were first, then everyone else has to wait or whatnot. That's not what I'm suggesting, of course. But yeah, in the sense that simplifying that procedure and making it more agile and easier to get that communication going, as opposed to waiting and waiting and waiting or something. I think that seems to be working for LEAP, and so maybe that can work in other domains as well.
Okay, thank you. There was.
I'm going to go back to Gennady here for a minute.
Thanks.
Yeah, for those that don't know, Gennady worked on the space solution aspect, thinking about some of the challenges that we could throw your way. So he's got an in-depth knowledge into what we are thinking about this. So
he's the mastermind
He's
behind the space solution. There you go.
You are too kind. Both Erics are too kind to me. But yes, I would like to speak about Space Hub, space solution element, and it's a little bit prompted by Guy. I would not want you to interpret Space Hub as CSA intent to build more CubeSats. We do have an important element, and Rutan is leading it, inspirational one, where building upon success of Cubics is one of the ingredients. But on the space solution, our objective is to solve high priority real life problems. They can be solved by CubeSats, by BigSats, by constellation, whatever it is.
Give us an example of what you're talking about when you say challenges. That will help us get into what you're saying. Just an example.
Speaking frankly, I would not want to go because we have defined several challenges. We have currently half a dozen challenges. So implementation of a space solution will be through the challenge process. For some of you who are familiar with DRDC D&D Ideas program, or who is familiar with ESA Scout program, it's something kind of inspired by those programs. It's contracting mechanism. It's not grants and contributions. It's contracts. Once again, focused on solving real problems. We have identified currently for the first pilot half a dozen challenges, and the reason why I don't want to go into those challenges today, because they will be part of RFI, and we basically have two problems to solve. Problem number one, we would like to hear back from you, are those challenges have traction with you? Are you thinking as well as us that those are high priority challenges for Canada to be solved? And a second very important element for us is, have we got it right with respect to specifying those challenges? Because are we over-specifying them, restricting potential solutions and creativity which will come from industry and academia, or we went into opposite direction and our challenges are too generic and do not direct your way of thinking. So it will be a part of RFI, which will come up hopefully before the end of this year, and that would be part of it. The second part will be, we would like to throw at you the whole package of a call for proposal, and to hear back from you, is it done right? Is it prompts you to sharpen your pencils and jump on it right away? Are we putting in place right processes? Are we putting in place right framework for us to collaborate, as it is a subject of today's discussion, cooperate, and to actually pull a very challenging task of providing solutions to those problems on a very short timelines? Because as Eric mentioned, we would like our projects to last not more than 36 months, from contract award to launch to space. That's challenging. As well, we heard from many of you an interesting paradigm shift that we are trying to implement in what we are doing now, where schedule is actually the king. So in a classical triangle of performance, cost, and schedule, traditionally, CSA was heavy on performance. We were trying to squeeze the last drop of performance out of our project and paid in cost overruns and schedule delays. In Space Hub, we are turning it completely upside down. Schedule is the king, and we would need to focus on a concept of a minimum value product and minimum valuable, not minimum value, minimum valuable product. And that is a huge cultural shift for us. I hope that working together as a community, we can make it happen. But bottom line is, we are focused not on building CubeSat, we are focused on solving problems while helping community to grow.
Well, thank you, Gennady. I think you covered a lot of more ground, so maybe a lot of things to think about. During that time, I saw my colleague Jean-Claude's hand go up. So over to you.
Jean-Claude Piedboeuf from CSA also, so very interested in the discussion we have today. A few remarks. We heard the Space Hub, and one thing for me which is important when we talk about facility and expertise, we have great facility and great expertise at the Canadian Space Agency, but it also exists in all the university and industry in Canada. So it's really, when we talk of, it's not only one point, it's many points. It's basically use the expertise you have in every facilities. Okay, so if you have a capacity to test satellite in Manitoba, so there is no need to travel to CSA if we can connect the people and say, okay, you can go there because there is a lab and they are part of the connection. So this is really something. In terms of the, I heard the R&D and tech demo, and I have to say, like CSA is spending proportional to the budget we have, quite a lot of funding in R&D support and tech demo. So what Gennady is speaking and Eric is speaking is a step beyond that. It's not more tech demo, it's not more R&D. It's really provide a service. So it's to find those that are interested in delivering a service. And the example, if we ask, Kepler is one. Kepler was not focused on the technology. It was, okay, I want to provide a service, and the technology is a mean to do it. It's not the end by itself. GHGSat is the same. They wanted to detect methane from space, and that's the goal they have. And they wanted to provide the service, and they know they have a technology that can do it. And as Gennady mentioned, it was maybe not the best science, the best technology, but it was enough to provide like initial operational capability, and from that they build something. This is where the shift we hope to achieve is really going, not only to invest more in R&D and more in technology development, but really for Canada to be able to do that kind of shift. Our president, Lisa Campbell, this morning mentioned the shift we see in US and in Europe. And where in US, the NASA is procuring more and more services, even in a field where we were thinking it was the domain of government, space flight, human space flight. They are now buying seed from commercial providers, and they have developed that on many years. So this is a significant shift that means now we, as Canadians, if we want to fly an astronaut in the future, we will have to buy a seed likely on the commercial US provider. And so it's really where Canada can play a role in providing services that will be needed by not only by the Canadian government, but by the world. And so basically to develop that kind of, and it's not easy, and we have been looking to different models. One interesting model is the Space Development Agency in US, where they face the same challenge. It's a DoD agency, and the DoD, it was very long from idea to launch something, and 10, 15 years, 20 years, very similar to what we do at CSA. And with this SDA, the Space Development Agency, they've been able to turn that in 2-3 years. And so when Gennady was saying 36 months, I said this is the longest. And that's why I'm very interested in a success story like Kepler, GHGSat, and all the other that you have. So what is the driver? How can we, from a government perspective, help the space sector to be a player? Because space is growing, and Canadians will use more and more space. The key is make sure that we can have the space they use coming from the Canadian space sector, and not only buy your connection from a Starlink that is coming from US, but to have some good Canadian company that will be able to provide the services to Canadian also. So this is the challenge we put in front of you all.
Yeah, thank you, Jean-Claude. I think also using the word services, right? It brings back the notion that it's not just about building the technology and put it in space. It's about what you're going to do with it, right? It's about, and I like what you're saying in terms of how is Canada positioned in order to offer these services, right? Whether it's research support, whether it's actual commercial industrial services, or for public good services. So we're talking about this. So we need to look at how do we collaborate. The other thing that I heard that's making me think of something maybe a little bit more provocative is that you said the word fast, and you said 36, and schedule becomes and there's a saying that you want to go somewhere fast, you go alone, you go a lot further if you work together. So how do we combine that? Like how do we, because we all want to collaborate, but how do we combine the collaboration with, yes. Sorry, I know you have the microphone.
Yep.
I'm going to give Mina the opportunity to respond to my intervention, but you're next.
Sure.
Thank you.
I just have a few points to raise, and they kind of tie back to the idea of what defines success here. So while schedule is incredibly important in the framework that we described, that you've got 12 to 18 months to live as an early stage company, I think something that's really helped us get over the hurdle is rather reframing it as rapid cycles of learning. And I know that it sounds like a nuanced difference, but that is a very important difference, because you put a schedule in front of an engineer, and then their immediate go-to is like, how do I assure you I will meet the schedule? And that's the only thing they'll care about. They'll compromise innovation, they'll compromise cost, they'll compromise anything if you tell them that schedule is king. So it's been incredibly important as a learning exercise for us to reinforce with our team that the goal is rapid cycles of learning. And in that context, we run 6-week sprints. In that 6-week time horizon, they have a set of objectives, and they try to meet those, then we reiterate on them. So just want to caution on the use of like schedule being king and the unintended consequences. And for us, how we measure then success as a result of that is, what are the number of successful spinouts? What are the things that have come out of this sprint that have been successful and actually led to an outcome? We draw on a lot of the methodology from like Software World, and we have a velocity measure, which I won't go into too much detail about that, but that is kind of what we think is success, which we have an inherent number of failures we should expect to see through the course of that process if the goal is really to go fast. And the last point I'll draw on here, and something that's been incredibly helpful for us, is an intern program. And that's created a tremendous amount of continuity. So any incentivization to continue to have more interns, we'd absolutely love to do it. We've brought on interns as early as first year university all the way through fourth year university. We give them that hands-on tactical experience. Pretty much every one of our interns has put something into orbit. Like there isn't a single intern that's worked at Kepler that hasn't touched hardware that's gone into orbit, and that's pretty cool to say. But continuing that experience has been tremendously helpful for us, and any incentives to continue to hire and promote interns creates that continuity beyond just the Cubics program and what are some of the things we could do later on.
I think a few people are taking notes right now. Thank you for that. And I really like a rapid cycle of learning rather than fail early. I think it's more positive, so thank you for that. Over to you.
Cool, thanks. I'm one of Phil's students, and something sort of everybody has sort of touched on is that in order to do things quickly, you have to not reinvent the wheel every single time. And I've worked on a few CubeSatellite projects, and the first thing we do on pretty much everyone is start from scratch. And not for every system, but you usually have to redesign things from the ground up. So one of the things that we've done with IRIS for our satellite is we've tried to design a modular system, and Phil has given me the green light that we can offer our modular structural system anyways to anybody who wants to use it, and then you can skip a lot of the
and actually, when Morgan was saying this to me, it made me think of the word hub, right? And Morgan, you told me about this website. What's the hub website where people share all their 3D printed designs?
Well, there's a couple. There's Thingiverse, there's Printables, and it's an open source designs for anything. And so for a lot of the designs, they're left as completely open source as I'm mechanical, so everything's left as step model, so you can just download it, and then rather than having to do hundreds of hours of design, you start from something that already works, and then you can refine it and skip hundreds of hours.
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes beyond CubeSats. Like, to your point too, this goes beyond it goes into a culture of sharing. And I will go back to CubeSat in a minute and just say that I think the CCP did a phenomenal job at establishing a network of collaborators across Canada. All 15 teams shared designs, they shared strategies, they shared the failures, they shared the successes, and we all come together because it's not a competition, right? We're all just trying to get it in space together. We're trying to learn this together, and I think this concept of enabling a platform that allows people to share these successes and share where appropriate. I mean, obviously there's going to be some companies that want to have things proprietary, but I think there's other university groups like ours that just want to try to learn together and draw upon other people's successes. And maybe that's another strategy the hub can take on.
Okay, thank you. We'll go for the microphone, and then John.
No problem. I actually was just going to say basically the same concept. I mean, you made the concept of if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. But we've actually seen kind of the opposite in that when companies try to do everything internally and build vertical integration from the very beginning, they rebuild the wheel every single time, and it ends up expanding their time, their capital expenditures, and we see a lot more where you can get a lot faster, a lot quicker, and with less investment by leveraging the industry that's around you. And so the industry is each individual focused on modular blocks. And I would propose that a lot of the developments in like the software world is because companies focused on modular blocks that ended up, each company would then be able to amalgamate all of those individual blocks and have a new product. And then, so a large part of it is allowing industry to focus on small blocks and other companies, again, bringing those together. And a big part of that is exactly around the hub and bringing industries together. Each company can focus on their specific thing and then all come together in the end. And individual companies can focus on a specialization that maybe applies to one project, but then ends up applying to 4 other projects, or lots of collaboration that way.
Okay, I guess what I'm hearing is the hub as a means to exchange. I think that's also your point. Makes everybody better aware of what's going on, and maybe allows some to focus on some issue or another that serves all, basically.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think even what Mina said earlier fits in really well to that, right? I mean, I expressed a challenge that we're having with our team, and Mina has a solution, right? I mean, if this hub was a place where people went with solutions and problems, and they kind of get match made together. I love that.
Yeah.
One other comment, because I think in the questions that the CSA wanted to touch a little bit on IP. We have been debating pretty heavily open sourcing quite a few things that we've done, just with the goal, because we don't exist well as a business unless the industry is thriving and doing good. And so, you know, if programs within the CSA had a component that incented going to open source the IP, so rather than delegating ownership to company or to CSA, this becomes like common use IP. It just really helps to encourage the hub to hub together and continue.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so John, then I don't know who, oh, yeah, okay, so John, and then we'll go to you.
Yeah, so just 2 things pretty quickly. So first of all, I'm glad that we had a student comment. I've seen so many students, you know, walking the halls today, and I'm really curious to hear from the students, because of course, you know, we're talking about building the future here. You are the future of space in Canada. And I really want to know, you know, what do you think of this idea? You know, what is it that we can't forget about as we start to build this up? And the other thing to say is just from a scientific perspective, what I've observed in academia is that there are kind of 2 groups of space-interested folks. So you have those people who really are just dying to touch the technology. You know, they want to be, you know, hands-on with something that's going to fly in space. But there are others for whom that is less of an important thing. They're interested in a big science question that they can go after. And if they can do that with computers and data, with modeling, then they're really interested in and really fired by that as well. So I wouldn't want the Space Hub to forget about that second group.
Yes, thank you, John.
Yes, thank you. So I'm Alexis from Northstar. I'm more of a policy background, so at Northstar, you saw the presentation from my colleague Frédéric. You know, we got a big ambitious project on space sustainability. We think it's a shared priority we have with governments around the world, such as Canada. But what we see happening in other countries is very much this shift to services and trying to think of looking at risk differently and look at that risk in an innovative kind of way and more of as an opportunity to do better instead of failure, right? So I think that echoes some comments we heard today. But if we want to be, we think if we're going to be competing on a global space economy, that shift to services is essential because it allows the interaction that's very necessary between the industry and the government, so the space community, the innovation, the academics, the entrepreneurs, to really be challenged by the government as a client, right? And that's something that you guys are working on. It's a very daunting task, I think, but I would just want to commend you for that. And I think just the format of the conversation we have today is a welcome shift and approach in this kind of new collaboration that we think need to happen if we are to be competing on the world stage as a space economy, as a Canadian space economy. So I would say services is a passage obligé if we are to compete. And also the work that needs to be done in government at looking at risk that you guys are doing and to question the government questioning itself as to send clear signals to the market, right? But also, I think one of the keys, like we are doing today, is very frequent and clear engagement in a collaborative fashion in discussing with the industry. So if we are to be partnering, it can't be a once a year discussion. It needs to kind of be a recurring, and it needs to be, it's more of an art form than a science, but we just encourage more engagement in the kind of way, the courageous thing that you're doing today, and just having this kind of free discussion.
Well, thank you. And you mentioned risk and changing the way we look at it. I remember a discussion I had with Ian Christie, and he's calling it now outcome assurance, which is completely different and a more positive approach or thinking when you get into this. Now I don't know what. Okay, Mick.
Okay, thanks, Richard. It was such a great discussion, and I want to echo my colleague's comment here about being open about it, because this is a very, very great format. One comment I think is, or an observation I want to make is faster, better, cheaper, I think is a mantra that some people in the room might remember from NASA in the 90s, and resulted in some successes and some failures. And I think ultimately, if we're talking about changing the triangle, is that there's a certain amount of risk tolerance we need. And I think in what venture capitalists do is they invest in more than one company, and not all of them will necessarily succeed. And I think it's just it's definitely a scary potential paradigm shift for a government to look at it in that way. But distributing that risk and accepting a certain level of learning in that model, I think is a necessary part of accepting that. And I think the NASA CLIPS program is a great example. We're going to see a lot of missions launch very soon, and I really sincerely hope they all soft land, but we don't know, right? There's a certain amount of risk. So that was my kind of first comment. The second one was I wanted to relate it back to the carpooling analogy, which I think is relevant when we're talking about modular systems and building upon each other's successes and services and putting things together. And I think having that common goal, and I'm not sure if the intention here is through the challenge statements, or if that's just one potential mechanism. But I'd be curious to know more, and maybe this isn't defined yet, about how those priority technologies or priority missions or services or capabilities are defined, because I think that could be one way to define a common destination and timeline, to use that carpooling analogy. But that'd be a potential way to implement that, because there's lots of great ideas in the room, and there's good ideas for the mechanisms, and it's about kind of putting it all together, all the spokes on the hub, I guess.
Yeah, we're going around the hub mentality. And one of the things I want to stress is that you mentioned risk and the government taking a different approach and everything. But I'd like I know we're getting close to the reception now, but really what I want people to leave this discussion with is the fact that we should even change that thinking in terms of risk. Oh, it's the government taking risk or not taking risk. It's what's the risk to the space community, to the Canadian space community, of not collaborating better, of not evolving? What's the risk? I think it's larger, and I think it goes into...
If I can tackle that one. So if we are not to change that approach, this is going to exacerbate what we see now, right? The difficulty to attract talent, to attract investment, because the service model allow for a much more velocity in the iterations and the signals that government can send to the market. So if we are not getting better at this or getting good at this, investments will go to other jurisdictions, and that will be attracting talent, and that's a downward spiral from there. So we've got a tremendous ecosystem in Canada. Now the biggest task and that you guys are tackling is to leverage that in this new space kind of way, to punch above our weight, what we've been doing in Canada, but doing it in a more impactful way. And in the end, the taxpayers' money will benefit because you'll be leveraging private investment and the private sector kind of ability to rally the troops more quickly. But I think it's a discussion to be continued for sure.
Oh yes, so this is not the end of it. Yes, sir.
Yes, Richard McCammon, C6 Launch Systems. I want to build on something that, Mina, you were talking about earlier, that a company has basically 12 to 18 months of life in the small, medium-sized business. Unless you raise more capital, and you've been very successful at it. I'm envious of what you've been able to accomplish. But the capital markets that we go to, we're looking for, in the beginning, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and in the end, up to millions of dollars. So the capital markets need to get primed for that sort of investment, rather than the angels that I also happen to be a part of, where they $25,000 is an investment. Well, $25,000 gets me an engineer for about a month and a half, and that's if I'm lucky. So we need to somehow get the capital markets involved in what we're doing to get those small, medium-sized businesses to actually get to the 24-month, the 36-month period. Mick, you can help me out here. I think 3 years ago or so, CSA sponsored, I think it was called Space Ventures, something along that line anyway.
Yeah, the pitch day, right? The pitch day.
The pitch day, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if CSA has re-engaged in that concept where the small, medium-sized businesses come again to do pitches towards the venture capital markets and expand on those capital markets, so that I know the pool for CSA and government is finite, and I appreciate the support that you've given C6, for instance, but also other companies in this room. But we need to expand beyond the government pool. We need to get into the capital market pools if we're really going to be successful. I'm wondering if CSA has thought about going back to those pitch days, and even there's information just on the marketplace on what the Canadian government is doing, what CSA is doing, what they see as the markets, so that we can start including that in our pitches to say, what does the market look like? Why do we have a space industry? Why are we going after that space money, so that we can actually accomplish what we're trying to do? So I want to turn the CSA's thoughts not strictly from to the technology and the technology hub that we've been talking about, but none of us can succeed unless we have the funding to grow that technology.
Thank you for the comment. I was looking through the crowd to see, I think I saw somebody from policy and CSA earlier. Anyway, we'll definitely take that into consideration. I think it's good, and I think that overall, collectively, I think the pitches that we need, like we have from industry, from academia, from government, I think we have different people we need to pitch to. And if we talk as a collective, if we have the share the information, so it allows you to pitch to the right people, it allows me to pitch to the right people, knowing. So again, it's a question of the hub exchanging information. So there's a lot of that. And I saw the microphone move.
If I
yeah,
may add
go.
to your comment, we had the BDC. The BDC has reached out to us very, very recently, so they're getting interested in space. So we had a few meetings with them, and we're trying to see if they could, if we could do something with them. Saying BDC could be another entity that provides funding, but yeah, we're looking into this differently, for sure.
Yeah, because I think it's hard to say if we didn't think about, like I'm not sure at all specifically on the topic that you're asking, because 3 years ago was just before pandemic, and then we got into the pandemic, and then so it may be restarting right now in terms of, but I don't have a colleague that would know specifically to your point, but that's a good comment.
Yes, hi, thanks. So my name is Purushin. We're all from this group's from York University. And along the lines of kind of sharing expertise, we're wondering, so university labs we find when we're doing our thesis or when we're doing our research, we tend to miss certain skills. We tend to have these gaps. And I'm wondering, can Space Hub help fill these gaps? Can Space Hub, our industry partners, or is CSA directly willing to kind of work with us to provide direct expertise or workshops to help us with these skills? Or are there opportunities for specialization? Is one university willing to do something in particular and another university does something else? Can we coordinate these efforts? And is that of interest to anybody here?
It's definitely part of the thing. It's one of the things that we're looking at for sure. I was talking earlier about providing expertise and facilities. That's exactly what that is. Now, we're not there yet. We still need to figure out the framework as to how we'll do it. We want to do it in a fair and transparent way. So, but definitely it's there on our to-do list, for sure. Yep.
There's nothing that our senior engineers love to do more than volunteer their time. Actually, we surveyed our internal organization, and we found collectively across the board there's an allergic reaction to providing sponsor-based funds to early stage teams of like university design programs, but because it didn't feel like we were doing much to actually contribute in that way. And there was a very strong positive reaction where there's a gap here, and our team is looking for volunteer opportunities to like proactively engage, to go out and support some of these design efforts. So anything that is available, certainly I'm sure our team would love to engage in it. And this might be a bit of a radical idea, and I'm not sure too much of what's been explored here, but we've seen other space agencies sponsor venture funds. So this has actually taken place in kind of broadly in the industry, where they say, we're going to give you a pool of capital, and we want you as a venture operator to go out and deploy it for the space sector. And we've seen that have some success, and like, you know, happy to talk about that where relevant.
Thank you. And with that, I like your comment because it's actually from the National EO Forum. There was a lot of discussion, a lot of mentions about the fact that we need to sustain the talent, right? We need to ensure that we have the tools there and to basically build the future, ensure that we have a space community that continues. And we are currently wrapping everything up in a summer report for that event. But one action that I wanted to take was actually to convey, basically to convene, sorry, not to convey, but to convene a different session specifically on talent and how do we as a community actually build for the future in terms of people. How do we work together? Because that is going to benefit academia, industry, government. So,
well, I just had one other thing actually, if I could, and I know I'm preventing people from here in the bar, so I'll keep this really quick. But I wanted to touch on something that John just brought up too a little while ago, which is that link back to science. And I think it's one of the things that I know my group takes a little bit for granted because I'm so closely related to the climate change scientists at the Center for Earth Observation Science. But I know that a lot of engineers, and this discussion has been strongly engineering-based and strongly business-based, which I think is appropriate, but I also want to tie it back to the science and say that there are a lot of scientists out there that maybe don't quite understand the value that they could get by partnering with an engineering team, or even understand what the possibilities are. So I know, for instance, the Arctic climate change people that I work with, I brought them to an engineering conference, and I said, here, stand up in front of all these engineers and talk about some of the challenges you're having. And that sparked an incredible conversation saying, wow, you need to have frequencies that can penetrate ice. I just did a paper on that, and you know, let's find a way where we can get engineers talking with scientists. And I would love to see the hub be a part of that, almost have scientists come there and say, I'm doing this research, how could space help me? And then have solutions available. They're saying, well, hey, maybe there's an engineering researcher that's developing a new way to control a spacecraft that could support someone that's trying to do communications or remote sensing. And I think tying that into the science is a really important part too. So I just wanted to echo what John had to say too.
Music to my ears. It's definitely something that we need to talk a little bit more of. And talking about that, I'm sorry, I'm trying to, but however, this has been, okay, we can't. Okay, I'm gonna So we have two more, and then I'm going to close this. And then I close this. So I should have warned you that we were reaching the 2-minute mark.
I'll keep it to 2 minutes.
It's overtime,
Sorry
yes.
for that.
Okay.
Thank you
Well,
for
no,
overtime.
but we were supposed to be on the ice, you and I, so overtime, okay.
Overtime for CSA. Okay, I'm CM Akhtar Fazoli. I'm actually working in the Space Hub Space Solutions team. We're in the thick of the program design right now. I obviously can't get into all of it, but I know people are thinking, their mind is churning. What is it going to be like? The best I can tell you is you could look at ideas. Gennady mentioned it. Go look at that website. It's the Innovation and Defense Excellence and Security. It's not going to be exactly like that. It's going to be better, but but the idea is that you will see challenges there, so you can see what the challenges will look like. There will not be those challenges you'll see from Space Hub, because we're going to gear it towards space and government kind of priorities. But you can get an idea of what that's like. If I would go back 10 years, a possible challenge could have been try to help us solve the methane and emission control in space. And one of the bids would be from GHGSat. And they would have bid that. We would have worked with them, come up with what the SAO and the statement of work and all the work would be like, and then they would have done it. Launched in 2016, the first nanosat, showed that it would work, and then they built a operational system. That would be the one example I can give you how it would look like, but not getting into the challenges.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, really sorry for the extension. Yeah, my comments more like actually in Canada we do have very strong microelectronics training. We have CMC Microelectronics. I'm not sure you're familiar with. Actually, it's a company sponsored by the government. We are very strong. Deployed all the tools and fabrication. So we have from universities, we access very advanced technology. For example, we have a 12 nanometer, 22 nanometer FDSOI from Global Foundry for our company. So basically what I mean, actually, we do, the student have really good training. And for example, my student just got a student award from European Space Effect Conference. So basically, what I mean actually is that our Canadian students have really good training in this mechatronics. And I saw that every time I went to those conferences, actually I saw a lot of space companies that provide electronics, right? And from Canada, we have a very limited number of companies provided radiation-tolerant electronics for space. And so, but I think our students do have very good training, and the CMC provide very good infrastructure. I think if we can marry this to expertise, I think we can. I do believe that as a Canadian, we can provide this kind of expertise and have some companies to provide those radiation-tolerant electronics and integrated circuit in the future. So, just my comment, and I really. So this is why I come to this conference and seeking for support and for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. So, with that, we're coming to a close, but certainly don't stop talking about collaboration. There's going to be food and drink. No, food and
drink for money.
Yeah, that's it. Paying bar. Pay. Yeah, drinks for cash or credit or whatever. Anyway, and food. I'm getting lost here. So thank you very much for your patience and your contribution to this discussion. We were trying a different, I certainly was trying a different approach, a different model of the discussion, and we certainly didn't fall asleep by the fireside. So, okay, so thank you very much, and really everybody, thank you for your contribution.
All right. So thank you, Eric. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Mina. Thank you, John. And thanks to everybody in the room for animating this last part of the afternoon in such a productive way. I think everybody has benefited from this, and I think it started a process that maybe can be rekindled from time to time as opportunities present themselves, and hopefully Cassie will be one of those presenters of opportunity at some future date not too long from now. Right now, we have the reception beginning outside, and just before we do that, I want to encourage you all to be back here by 8:15 tomorrow morning, when we will have the beginning of the next day. And tomorrow morning, the keynote presentation will be given by Colonel Catherine Marchetti, who is with us right now. Catherine, looking forward to that. And the keynote at lunchtime will be Neil Rollins and René Doyon talking about the first results from the James Webb Space Telescope. And these are two people who are at the very heart of that program. So it's going to be really very interesting, I'm sure. To conclude the day, we will have the gala dinner, to which all regular participants, I repeat, are not only invited to attend, but are encouraged, because it's going to be really a gala dinner. We'll have some senior awards presented to accomplished people in the Canadian space community. And so I hope as many of you as are free tomorrow night will join us for what will be truly a lovely evening. So please enjoy the reception, and catch you all maybe soon.